Hello everyone, and happy Save the Eagles today. We are learning about our resident bald eagle, Cisco, and what we can do to protect eagles like him in the wild. So, there are more than 60 different types of eagles that live on the planet, and they are in every continent except for Antarctica. In fact, there are only two eagle species that live in North America, our bald eagle, as you can see here, and the golden eagle. So, bald eagles, oftentimes they have this really classic white head, and their heads are not bald, as you might think, but the word bald came from an Old English word meaning white. So they essentially mean, the bald eagle name essentially means white-headed bird. And so when they are younger, they're often darker. They can sometimes be mistaken for golden eagles. This can help them camouflage when they're younger. And then when they reach maturity at around 5 or 6 years of age, they get their classic white bald head. And so you can see Cisco is enjoying some diet today. He's using his really sharp beak to tear into his diet there. In the wild, they can eat a lot of different things. They can eat fish, they can eat rabbits. They're very opportunistic. Sometimes they even steal diets from other birds and other species, so they can be quite an opportunistic feeder. If you can notice his feet, they have a really classic yellow feet, and you might be able to see that he doesn't have feathers on his feet. And since they are fishing birds, they spend a lot of time in the water, and if anyone can figure out why they might not have any feathers on their feet, you can let us know at the end of the chat. And if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat. We'll be taking questions at the end. So bald eagles slowly get lighter as they age. They also have really light eyes that also get lighter as they get older. And you can hear his call. It's a much quieter call than you might imagine for a bird of his size. They can get quite large. The females are larger than the males, and they have a wingspan of 8 feet. And so Cisco is a male. He's a little smaller, and he is a southern bald eagle. So he is a little bit smaller than the northern bald eagles. Bald eagles will mate for life, so it is quite a romantic story in that sense. If one of the individuals die, then they may repair, but their courtship is really beautiful. They'll often fly into the sky, they'll interlock their talons, and they'll sort of cascade down flying together, and then at the very last second they'll part. And so it's like a cartwheel display, and that's how they'll bond. And then bald eagle nests can be some of the biggest in the bird kingdom. They can take several months to build, and they can be reused from year to year. They build some of the largest bird nests. They can be 5 to 6 feet in diameter, 2 to 4 feet tall, and the biggest bald eagle nest seen was in Petersburg, Florida. It was 9.5 feet in diameter, 20 feet deep, and weighed almost 6,000 pounds. So this is a huge investment of time and energy on the part of both eagles. Both the male and the female will build the nest together, and they'll travel great distances throughout their lives, but they'll often return to where they were born and nest and breed within 100 miles of where they were raised. So Cisco is 24 years old. They can live on average in human care for about 17 years, so he's doing quite well. They can even live up to 50 years in some cases. And he was originally in the wild. He suffered a car strike. And so a question that we often get from guests when they look at his enclosure is they don't see a lot of vertical space in his enclosure, and that's because of the car strike. He is a wing amputee, so he's lacking a lot of his wing on one of his sides, so his closure has been specially designed for him so that it is safe for him to get around. And a lot of people have probably heard about bald eagles and heard about bald eagle protection. They were once very endangered. They became our national symbol in 1782, and there were over 100,000 nesting eagles at that time, but their population started to decline in the 1800s. This was because of a lot of reasons, people would be fearful of them predating on their livestock, and there was also a declining of their prey. And then after World War II, DDT, which was an insecticide used to control mosquitoes and other insects, was introduced, and DDT had the really terrible consequence that it would cause bald eagle eggshells to be very thin and crack before they were ever born. So in the 1960s, there were only about 400 nesting pairs of bald eagles left. And so that really kicked everyone into gear. We've implemented a lot of conservation strategies, and thanks to all of these efforts, bald eagles are now considered least concern, and as of 2016, there were over 72,000 individuals. So truly a remarkable success story. And so if you see a bald eagle in the United States or in this area, they've been seen in western Massachusetts. I just saw one this past summer in the Quabbin, so they really like to be around bodies of water. Remember that bodies of water are really vulnerable to lots of kinds of pollution, and eagles and other predators are particularly vulnerable because of a process called bioaccumulation. So remembering to be mindful of the kinds of pesticides that we're using, because any of these things can get into the waterways and affect animals like Cisco. So if we had any other questions about Cisco here.
I know we had one question from Alice asking, did you guys have 2 of them? And yes, Alice, we did. Our female oboe was another rescued bald eagle, and she did pass away a few years ago due to old age. And we have a question from Lexi. Why is he wiping his beak on his perch?
That is a really fantastic question. We'll see this behavior in the barn owl as well. And if you can imagine, he doesn't really have hands in the same way that we do. So after he's been eating some of his diet, he uses his perch to wipe his beak off, much like we would use a napkin to wipe our faces after we've had a meal. So that's a really great observation.
And what do bald eagles typically eat in the wild, and what do they eat here at the zoo?
Another really great question. So in the wild, they'll eat a lot of different things. A lot of times they'll eat fish. That's why they have these specialized talons to grip onto the slippery fish. And I mentioned before that their legs were bald. The reason being that they spend a lot of time in the water, and if they had feathers on their legs, then they would get wet. So they spend a lot of times eating fish, but they'll eat other things, amphibians, small mammals. And here at the zoo, he receives rats and other types of carnivorous diets. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to come see Cisco in person, we'll be open today, and you can find him along the Yukon Creek. Thank you so much for tuning in.